Welcome to video 3 of how to write a magical realism short story. This is the second part of the rising action. So far in the story, the narrator has explained that animals ranging from ants all the way to dogs are fleeing towards nature, towards safety. And when he went to go tell his friend Leaf Whitaker, something mysterious happened. The color neon orange disappeared. There was paint that was neon orange and it disappeared, and all of the neon paint that Leaf had used in multiple paintings disappeared. In every painting, the neon orange color had vanished. So we went through those paragraphs and talked about exposition and rising action. I also explained with this story the rising action's fairly long. That's why there's 2 videos dedicated to rising action. So now let's continue on in the story. So the next paragraph reads, in the articles covering the aftermath of the 2004 tsunami of Southeast Asia and the 2011 tsunami of Japan, there was one distinct commonality I remembered. All of the animals fled. So this opening sentence does a huge jump. We go from Leaf's living room, where the neon color orange has just vanished, all the way back to 2004 and 2011 in different countries with the tsunamis. This creates hybridity. So remember that hybridity is when you mess with time and narration. So hybridity, that's spelled right. I guess spell check just doesn't know it. So it's plays with time and narration, where it's moving back in time, a flashback, and also while it's still the same narrator, still first-person narrative, it's not in his life anymore. He's now talking to us about bigger concepts. So it's still playing with the scope of the narration, zooming all the way out to the whole world when it was just zoomed into his specific life. So that creates hybridity. Please make sure to use hybridity in your story. You can either play around with time or with narration, or you can use both. And if you're not quite sure how hybridity works, a really easy way to use hybridity is flashforwards or flashbacks. That's something that I know you can use. So if you're having trouble with hybridity, use it that way. So next, the next plot point reads, there were stories of elephants in a wildlife preserve fleeing from the coastline and bats feverishly flying, alliteration, inland in the middle of the day. Humans' lost instinct fascinated me. Our loss of a superior sense in our search for superiority, also an alliteration, and a food chain with which we refused to identify ourselves was ominous. And just as in the past years, once again no one noticed. Outside, my neighbors chided their pets with impatience. Come inside now. My neighbors stopped their cars with irritation as herds of cows shuffled across the streets toward distant hills. My neighbors turned on desk lamps to finish their finance reports and email updates, because flocks of birds became so thick that they blotted out the sun. They didn't notice, and so my neighbors went home. They turned on the evening news, which only showed traffic jams on Queens Midtown Tunnel, partly sunny icons dancing over a map of New York, and a harrowing piece on a grandmother who once again lost all of her money to an email scam. Then it happened. It happened so blatantly that it couldn't be ignored. Across the town and state and country and continent and world, it happened. The image of traffic on the afternoon news built up because of road construction suddenly changed, as every orange work cone disappeared. Drivers gasped, cars swerved, metal crunched against metal, and it was all caught on video. 5 minutes later, the quickly uploaded video would receive 5 million views on YouTube. So here we have a very different paragraph. It's so different from the other paragraphs we've dealt with so far, and that's because it's doing a very different thing. Here we are finally getting to the political critique. Here where the author is talking about how, where is it? They didn't notice. Here we can see that he's criticizing people's failure to notice the world around them. And they notice so little about the world around them. Things like tsunamis can take them by surprise when there's clues everywhere. And so this author is very critical about the human's inability to detect things that animals with instincts can detect. And he's kind of criticizing how we think we're superior when we have a lot of inferiorities towards animals with instincts. Then we see this political critique again when he writes, 5 minutes later, the quickly uploaded video would receive 5 million views on YouTube. This political critique continues, where we now see that while humans won't notice these major things happening around them, they will spend their time watching YouTube videos, so much so that you'll get 5 million views in 5 minutes. So here the political critique is developing. So what this paragraph does is it brings in the hybridity, it brings in the political critique, and it also uses literary devices. It had a great deal of alliteration, it had tons of imagery, it had allusions to New York, which also helps with the real world setting. New York and Queens Midtown Tunnel. Here we have allusions and real world setting, which tend to work hand in hand. So you're going to want to make sure that you use these things in your writing too, because it's one, going to be in your rubric, and also because it makes your writing better. It'll make your stories more fun to read and more powerful when they are read. So here we have our plot point that humans aren't noticing what's going on around them. Okay? So let's move on to our next plot point. It didn't stop with the neon orange. With the passing hours, all shades of orange faded away. Then it started in on red, which was far more dangerous. A man was struck and killed by a truck when his red bike instantly disappeared and he collapsed into the road. The bricks of houses suddenly disintegrated into the air and roofs caved in on the heads of poor, unsuspecting homeowners. Fire trucks became useless piles of metal gears and tires, while the matching fire hydrants went missing, allowing geysers of uncontained water to spurt into the air and flood the streets. So here